Hello, everyone. I am Heather with Magnificent Mamas, and we are joined today with author Bryan Wayne. And I'm going to let Bryan go ahead and introduce himself.
Thanks for having me. My name is Bryan Wayne Dull. I've been writing now for a little over 10 years at this point. I started off writing, well, it's always been paranormal for the most part. But my first book, Solstice, came out about 11 years ago, and then I finished up that series and just kind of started writing more individual paranormal stories.
Nine.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I live in South Carolina right now with my family, and I love it.
You want to tell us a little bit about one of your books?
The book that actually came out a couple weekends ago is called The Pressure.
Yeah, I've heard of that from Timothy King, I think.
Yes. So that's been out for a couple weeks now. And essentially what that book entails, it follows a family that went mother, father, 2 boys. And the older sibling suffers from chronic migraines. The story kind of came from, I deal with those as well. My wife way more in a bigger capacity than I do.
Oh, yeah.
And the story kind of came from that, where I had one so bad. He gets it so bad that it resorts to violence for temporary relief. So this also is on the precipice of the biggest winter storm happening in Ohio since the late 70s. Mm-hmm. And with migraines, a lot of it's due to sudden weather change.
Yep.
Which is where the title of The Pressure comes from. The barometric pressure.
I was just going to say barometric pressure.
Exactly. And it gets so low, but he gets so violent that they could resort to locking him in the basement when this happens.
Oh, wow.
But things don't happen the way they plan to, and he gets out. So you got 2 situations going on. You stay in the house where your child is essentially trying to kill you, lock yourself in the doors, in the rooms, or do you go out into the negative 25, 30 degree temperature and hope you survive?
I think I would have to lock myself in the house.
Well, that's one way of doing it. One way of doing it. So, and it's a novella. A lot of my stories are very contained into one township or a house, one area. I think kind of the enclosed space is a lot more. But that's essentially, without going into any more spoilers, that's essentially what the book's about. It is violent.
So would you say it's more like paranormal horror, or what type?
I wouldn't say paranormal. I don't really know how to describe it. I like to try to keep some of the horror that I write grounded in some kind of reality that people go through or things that have happened. And I write about some of that stuff in other books as well. But I would just call it horror.
No subgenres.
I don't know, because I don't know if this has been done before in any kind of capacity. I couldn't tell you. But I wouldn't go as far as calling it like splatterpunk or anything like that either. So just your basic horror story. I always, if I had to compare it to a movie, I always kind of tell people like 28 Days Later, except for it's not all over the world. It's just in a backyard.
Would you say teenagers could read it, or just adults?
I think teenagers was fine, especially with giving them on what's on TV nowadays. That's fine.
Yeah.
It does get violent. There is some language in it, but I don't think it's necessarily anything teenagers or older teenagers at that point haven't heard before. So I think that'd be fine. I wouldn't say don't let your 13-year-old necessarily read it unless you feel like they're way advanced for that. But yeah, I would say the older teenage demographic's fine.
Well, I'm always curious when I'm asking, if there's triggers, if there's an age range you would definitely not recommend it for.
Yeah, I would say at the very least, I would say just try to keep it below
That's awesome. That opens up to a wide range of horror enthusiasts, though.
Sure. And I think it's the people that I've read so far. Funny enough, there's I go through these headaches, these migraines, these whatever, and I'm and I was really surprised how much people kind of latched onto it, even though it's not a good situation, but it's they understand.
Oh yeah.
So
I get migraines and I get sinus headaches, and I completely get it, to where you've taken over the max dose of medicine to try to relieve the pain, and you would do anything to get rid of the pain. I completely understand.
I had one so bad. It's actually in the author's notes in the book, but I talk about having my first one was just so bad. I was living in Florida, and I just wanted to take a drill to my head.
nothing you can do. You can try every weird remedy, every weird thing you've ever heard of.
This is it too. I know this is a podcast, but
Oh, no, go ahead.
so.
We're going to post it on YouTube too, so.
Oh, you are? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that's the pressure. I know it's reversed on the screen, but that's the cover of it. Like I said, not a huge book.
No.
It's just imagination, so.
That looks awesome. Yeah. Like I said, another author recommended me reaching out to you and recommended your book and everything. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, that was awesome. I never know with some of these things that I put out there. And over the years, you kind of learn new tricks of the trade as far as writing is concerned. And I stepped away from it for a couple of years, like promoting myself. I just kind of quit for a while. And then as far as the promotion, I was still writing, but I have 3 books coming out this year. 2 of them I've been sitting on for 2 years. I was like, you know what, it's just time to do this or don't.
I think sometimes they wait until it's the right time, till they're ready. I know, like, because I write sci-fi fantasy and I'm just publishing a little bit through Kindle Vella. Going that route works for me right now. And so I'm doing a series, but I'll jump between the stories to make sure stuff is connecting right. And then I'll just so I'll be working on one for a little bit and then go to the next one and go back, and it works.
That's good. Whatever works, whatever works, 100%. But that's where the pressure started at. It was a Kindle Vella.
So how many books have you published in total?
In total now, 7. Some of them, though, like I said, over the years, I've kind of learned new things as far as writing techniques concerned. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm going back and rewriting some areas and going over any of these areas. So some of the books that I had out aren't available right now, but they...
Are you like fleshing them out a little bit more, that type of thing, or?
I wouldn't say fleshing it out necessarily. I didn't want to change the overall flow of the book. I just, sometimes I'm my own worst enemy, right? It's like, I couldn't have, I could have said that in a little bit better way or whatever, things like that. And I just, ever since I redid The Pressure, and then I redid my other book that came out like 5 years ago called Small Hearts, that's coming up in June. I was like, maybe I should just go back and just give all these a once over, and and just be like, okay, here you go, this is it.
Let me ask you this. So if you could sit down with any writer, dead or alive, and co-author a book, who would it be?
I think, if I'm being honest with myself, it would probably be Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club. He has a way about him in his writing, and I just I love his. I haven't read his new one, but I love all.
So if you could bring one of your characters from your story to life and spend a day with them, who would it be and what would you do?
I think I would spend the day with a character. Does that have to be like, does any character in my book, or just? Yeah. I'd probably say Emily Sinclair. She's the main character in the book I did called Small Hearts that I'm re-releasing. And I would want to spend it. It's kind of weird to talk about without going into spoiler territory, but the premise of that book is she was a elementary school teacher, and who lost several of her students during a school shooting. So she kind of quit. She left the teaching profession, and she feels very ostracized by the town that she lives in. She doesn't, she's afraid to go out. She's seeing ghosts. And really, the crux of that book is her. It kind of goes back talking about the students and all that, and then up to things happen. But I think she's a very. When things like that happen, you never talk about the after. You never talk
just
about
the event.
Yeah, and it was in the survivor's guilt, right? So I think I would want to talk to her because she needs to be. Someone needs to talk. In that, not that I would know what that's like by any stretch of the imagination, but I always felt for that character as I was writing it, that she just, sometimes people just want to be heard. That's all.
I agree completely. I think that's, something to think about too, that we just get caught up in the moment, in the event, so to speak, and don't think about the stuff that comes afterwards that people have to deal with. I know, like, in some books, when they bring that up, like the aftermath of a tragic event or something like that, it just grips at your soul, I feel like. And like grabs you.
That was a hard one to write. That took 2 years total, because I didn't I wanted to write it, but I didn't. I just felt this need that I needed to for whatever reason. But yeah, yeah. Well, it's going around, and it still goes on, but not. At least it's not being covered the way it used to be. But at the time when the idea came up to do it, it was just the Sandy Hook thing happened, and and I read a story about a teacher who died, protecting the kids in her classroom, and that's kind of where it sparked from. So
it's so sad and so scary, and so I homeschool my daughter, and when I hear about things like this going on in public schools, it just makes me so thankful that my daughter is, safe and at home. So if you had to write a book on a genre you have not written on before, what would it be?
I would like to try science fiction at some point. I've actually thought about a couple of different things, but I don't know if I'm ready to pull the trigger on that anytime soon yet, because I got so many other things that I've thought about writing. But I've had a couple ideas, and maybe sooner than later I'll pull the trigger on that when I'm comfortable.
That's what I do with sci-fi fantasy. You can make everything however you want it to be.
Exactly.
I agree completely.
Not a situation. Yep. Well, that's cool that you do that, though. I think that's a whole nother, science fiction is just a whole nother beast compared to horror and paranormal. I actually, we watched the new Dune movie yesterday in the theater.
Was it good?
Oh, it was.
Did you like the original Dune movie?
I have it, but it's been a long time since I saw it when I was a kid. My grandfather really liked books, and I was too young. I didn't know anything about the books, but I remember him really liking the David Lynch version of Dune. Despite, I know it's aged dramatically. But there's some differences for sure. I mean, other than obvious, better camera, special effects. But the second one kind of went another way with a particular element of the movie, and I'm sure the book too. But I was fine with it. It wasn't, for me personally, it was fine. It was fine. But overall, I think it's great.
I've read the books, and it's been a long time. Let's see, I was probably in my early 20s when I read them, and I watched the old Dune movie, and I remember not being very happy with it compared to the books. I mean, the books are almost always better, obviously. Now, you have some occasions where the movies can be better, but I think I felt let down from the way the book was compared to the movie.
Yeah, I just think it was one of the situations where you were trying to fit that book into 2.5 hours, whatever time that movie was, and that just didn't do it any justice. And then you just the time limitations, and also maybe the script was kind of strange, casting or whatever. But I think they went into the right mode, splitting that book into 2 movies with this new iteration, and it worked out really well, I think, for the most part.
I'll have to check it out. I've seen the previews, and I've kind of just, no, I don't want to watch it after the last one, after reading the book and the book being good. But I might have to check it out.
I think it's at least once I think it's worth checking out, because I think it's one of the better science fiction movies I've seen in quite some time. But it's been a while since I read the original Dune as well. But I haven't read any of the other ones. I haven't read Messiah or Children of Dune. I have them. I just haven't read them.
Yeah, it's been a few years since I've read them, to say the least. So I think I'm going to have to get those books again, because I used to have, all of them.
So, yep. 6 of them, I think, right? Oh, the original.
Yeah. Something like that. I don't remember. I know there's, you had mentioned 3 of them. I know there's, I think, more, though.
Well, there's, Chapter House Dune, and there's 2 other ones I can't remember right off.
Yeah, the top of my head.
Yeah. But Dune, Messiah, Children of Dune, that's the first, right? And then I think the author's son continued with Dune books, but they're not in the same capacity that those original ones are.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I like it. Dune 2, I thought was.
Well, I'll have to check it out.
You should at least once.
I will. So if you could travel to any time period, what would it be?
I would travel to old Los Angeles, Hollywood during the 1920s, 30s, whatever. But I would want to be a detective solving a case.
Which case?
Whatever. Give me one, because old Hollywood cop movies, fascinating. I mean, I like movies in general, and that's probably where it stems from, but I mean, like, a lot. And for some reason, movies that are set during that time era, the way they dress, the way they talk, the way things just looked back then, just really, I just find fascinating. And I kind of wish that some of it kind of looked the same these days, but
yeah,
you know. But I would have to say that, because I think I've had that question before, and I think that would have to be the go-to.
it would definitely be an interesting era. You said the 20s, so that's not. Yeah, is Prohibition going on then?
I don't think so.
That's later, right? That's what I thought, like 40s.
Yeah, I mean, 40s would be good too. I think that's when, like, Hollywood started really ramping up in the 50s and all that. So, but you're around the old Hollywood time. Definitely.
I love, like, all these old classic movies and even black and whites and stuff like that. And I was watching something the other day, and my daughter's like, "What are you watching?" And I can't remember now what it was. And I was like, "It's called a classic. Sit down and watch it." It was funny.
That's what it's called. It's just a classic.
I mean, really.
Yeah. No, 100%. I'm lucky in that aspect that not so much anymore that she's gotten older, but when she was younger, she was very interested. All the different types of movies. Now she kind of has her own things going on now, and whatever about what mom and dad are watching. I'm glad that she's open to those type of movies. I think there's a lot of, especially now, not a lot of kids, teenagers, or even young adults that would even bother with those older movies anymore, I think.
Yep, I agree completely. I know when I was growing up, I'd go to my grandparents and my aunt and uncle's house and stuff like that for, like, holiday breaks from school, and I'd always watched some sort of old classic movies or TV shows, and I loved it.
Yeah.
It'll be good memories, and you'll never forget until you do, like dementia.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, another thing I'm afraid of, which is something I'm writing about right now, actually. Ugh. I think all the stuff comes from, with the horror stuff, just comes from personal fears. When I really think about it, Alzheimer's, like that petrifies me.
Well, listen, if you ever need some stories about that, come talk to me, because I worked in locked dementia units, and I could probably give you some insight.
Yeah,
without, going into anything violating their rights or...
Right.
What's the most challenging scene you've ever had to write, and how did you tackle it?
The scene in the book that's coming out against Small Arts that we talked about the school shooting.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get to the point where the day came. What happened. And it's like, how do I do this tastefully? It was tough. Not because I didn't know what to jot down, just emotionally, I have to step away from this.
Could you share a piece of writing advice that you found to be particularly helpful or unconventional?
One that I've discovered about myself over the past few years is sometimes you have to look back and look at your work and realize that there's a word that you overuse in your books that is not needed at all. For me, that word is that, because that's the way we talk, right? And that's what's going on in your mind when you're doing conversation. But if it's spoken dialogue, that's fine. If it's not, in description, I guess it's kind of frowned upon by a lot of people. So, but that's just my word. Other people have other words as well. That's overused or just unnecessary in the context, writing. Why? So maybe over time identify that and then go back.
That word.
Yeah, find that word in the word search or whatever in your manuscript, go through it and see if it's needed. And then the other thing, as far as just, not so much promoting yourself, but kind of more of a state of mind. I left promoting myself and writing in a way because I was just like, I just kind of gave up. I grew frustrated. And it was one day I just happened to think about it, and I went on Goodreads and looked at a review for one of the books, and someone's like, this is my top read for, whatever the year was. And I'm like, and sometimes that's all it takes. And I guess my point with that is that your book could very well be one of somebody's favorite books ever.
I agree completely.
And maybe that's what you kind of have to, kind of keep in the back of your mind, even when sales are slow or you're not getting engagement through your social media, whatever the case may be. At some point, if that book exists, I believe that someone will find it and they'll love it. And then that right there is worth however long work it took to publish that book by yourself or through, traditional means.
I don't think authors necessarily, especially once you're published, get in there for the money. They get in there for the writing and whatnot, and the readers to enjoy.
Yeah, I would much rather people read the book and give me feedback or give me, rate it on Goodreads, whether it's a negative or a positive review. Because, I'm not, at this point, at least I'm not, it's not my career. It's something that I just do because I can't sleep unless I do it sometimes. Or if it's something I'm thinking about, trying to go to bed, like, ooh, I should. Like,
and then you have to literally get out of bed and go write it.
Yep. And for a lot of people, that's the reason. So, but that's my advice.
Well, thank you. And thank you for coming on our show. Do you want to share anything else and share your book again?
Sure. This is The Pressure. It's out. It's when we're recording this, a couple weeks old. You can find this. Actually, I take that back. You can get it on Barnes & Noble, I believe. For some reason, it's showing sold out on Amazon, and some third party is trying to sell it for like $27. Don't spend $27 on this book. But normally it would be $14.99. But if you go to my TikTok page, which is horror_writer_Bryan, Bryan, and go to the shop, you can get it for $12.99. And there's also a limited edition box as well that comes with a bunch of goods.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah, sure. And then the big thing about that one is there's these handmade bookmarks.
Oh, that's cool.
And it has like onyx and white, black, and red's kind of the theme of the cover. So you got like bloody snowflake, you got a hammer, you got an axe on it.
That's epic.
So that right there, I think, is worth the price. And there's a couple other goodies, fun little goodies in there that kind of go with. I always like.
That's if you buy it on TikTok.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us today and being on our podcast. And we will make sure to have your links and whatnot in the descriptions. And it's just been so fun talking to you today.